Hi, Michael.
Good evening, Robert. How are you tonight?
Doing well. How are you?
I am doing great, and I've been looking forward to talking to you, my friend. I'll tell you, I put up some links. By the way, I should tell people this quickly. If you go to the homepage of Late Night in the Midlands, you'll see in the picture slider a picture, and it says for tonight's picks. If you click that, it will take you over to Robert's site where he has some fascinating pictures for you to look at. So I thought I'd get that out there, so you could go, or you could go to our drop down menu, L&M tonight's show picks or something like that. Tonight's show picks, and the link is there as well. So if you want to go over and look at some of the things we're going to be talking about tonight, but Robert, welcome aboard, and it's great to have you back. And you got on with us the other night, a couple weeks back, and
Yeah.
you've really piqued a lot of people's interest. So wherever you'd like to start would be great with me. I mean, I'm all ears. I guess start
Well,
with a little background, maybe.
yeah. Well, I mean, thank you for putting up the links and for having me back on the show. I, yeah, I've done a lot of things in my lifetime, but I guess I should say I worked as a corporate journalist for Honda Research and Development towards California for about 8 years. And that was very helpful in my later life as I started, or I should say, I continued my research about UFOs and extraterrestrials. I learned a few things about creating timelines, and I think that's really important because in order to put all this into context, we sort of, I find anyway, it's helpful to have a timeline. And that's what I did with my investigations of Washington, D.C. I mean, I can't believe it, but I spent like almost 8 years investigating Washington, D.C. and all the covert UFO activity there. But I'm also the editor of Unicus magazine. I started my own talk show for a while there. I was doing that, and I've been taking a break to continue my research. And oddly enough, it's led me back to my hometown of Malibu, California, which I mean, everybody knows the place, or at least they think they do because of all the the television shows and whatnot, movie stars living there. But there's a whole nother side to that. Just like Washington, D.C., everybody goes, oh, I know, hey, there's nothing you can tell me about Washington. It's like it's such a public place, right? Well, guess again, I mean, it's just that's kind of how it goes for me. I have a knack for finding things that most people overlook.
And yeah, and I was looking at the pictures on your site, and I love going to your website, by the
Thank
way.
you.
You've got some great information there, and it really, really gets a person thinking. And it got me thinking today. And I'm looking
Okay.
at these pictures. So off the coast of Malibu,
Yeah.
there appears to be what would be a base of some sort. Is that
Right.
correct? And then there's these monuments that are just incredible. Now, where are those? Are those near that base or?
Yes, it's directly inland from the base. And it's like okay, timeline again. How this all started was when I was living in Malibu. I was working there as a security guard, and it was September of 1985 on the equinox when I saved a boy's life. He was bleeding to death, and basically all I did was call the paramedics. But if I hadn't done that, he would have bled to death right there in the house. Okay, so what happened though at that time was I saw these other dimensional parasites in the house, and it was only for a moment, but it was long enough for me to realize there was something wrong. What happened was these things started attacking me when I broke up their party. They started coming after me, and so I ended up going up to the mountains that night by myself and meditating or praying or whatever you want to call it, and having an out of body experience, literally going into another dimension where everything was light, and meeting a being there who was extremely radiant, bright. I mean, he was a being of light, I guess you call it, a light being, and who said he was the father or my father. I can't remember which exactly, but anyway, after I came down off the mountain, I checked up on the boy, and it turned out that he did live. He had to have 300 stitches in his head, face, whatever. Yeah, it was. I'm telling you, this was a life or death situation. And this, to make things even weirder, is like I had two different women tell me that they saw me in their dreams the night I was up on the mountain. So this got me really curious, Michael. I mean, it's like I wasn't sure what was going on. So I started going back up to the mountains, and part of me, I was looking for, hopefully, to try and connect with this person again who said he was the father. And 'cause at that point I really had a lot of questions, and what I found instead were these megalithic monuments. And what was really, I mean, for me anyway, what was really weird was, I mean, you talk about deja vu. When I got there and I started seeing these monuments, I thought, hold on a second, I've seen these before in my dreams. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to have recurring lucid dreams, meaning that when I was in my dream, I was in my room, I was in my neighborhood, I knew where I was, okay? I also knew I was sleeping, but for some reason I had this other body that I could go places, and like sometimes I would just go next door to the school.
So did it feel deja vu when you actually seen these things in real time?
Yeah, it shocked me. I mean, I was 25 years old. I'd already been to 57 countries. I'd seen some of the great monuments of the world, like Stonehenge and the Parthenon and the Great Pyramids. I mean, I'd actually been there. So like I said, growing up, when I had these dreams about these, the where I went, I knew where I was in my dream, even as a child, because I had landmarks. The Point Mugu Naval Base. I'm just, some people, they're really good with orientation with landmarks. I mean, I never get lost. I always know where I am, and I know where everything. I have this spatial awareness, I guess, whatever you want to call it. So even when I was dreaming as a child, I knew where I was going. I just figured it was all in my imagination, because there's no place like that. Okay, let me put it to you this way. Sometimes I would be up in the mountains at this place that I called my night school, where it was this temple, and it had this very ornate carvings, and there was these people there, and they were teaching classes. They, not just for me, there was a lot of people there, and it was bizarre, it really was. And then other times I would have lucid dreams where I was with the Native Americans. Now it turns out, I would find out much later in life, that when I actually started meeting some of these Native Americans in Malibu, the Europeans call them Shumash. I don't think that's what they call themselves, but the bottom line is, when I started speaking to some of the elders and I showed them the pictures of the monuments, they said, "Oh, those were created by the first people." And I said, "Well, who's that?" And they said, they were destroyed in the flood. I said, "Really?" Because that's pretty universal. I was very surprised to hear him say that. But one of the things I remember about my dreams with the first people, so-called, was they not only did they have the temple, but they also had stone cities that were, fairly elaborate, and they had ships, and to me, they looked like Greeks, and in their dress was robes, these white toga type things with sandals. And so I didn't know anything about Lemuria at that time, but after I had that experience in 1985, people, like one of my friends gave me a book out of nowhere. I guess I've been telling him what was happening, but he says, "Oh, you need to read this book. It'll make help make sense." And it was by Norman Paulson, and I do have a link to some of that book, because it was very helpful. Not only tell me about Lemuria, but also maybe where these parasites had come from. Because that was a really big thing for me. Was I didn't understand what those things were, but somehow intuitively I knew that they were influencing that boy to harm himself.
And if I may, I was reading up on these parasites, okay. And I guess at one point you had discovered that they were actually like holographic, and I'm wondering if they're actually holographic, then that would mean that they're not real and that we make them real, or how's that work?
No, they're in another. Okay, look, you could say everything's holographic, but the holograms interact with one another. Let me just put it this way: it's a virtual reality that we live in. Those things exist as more or less in a higher frequency. They're not physical, but they still need energy. I mean, everything is energy anyway, right? So they need a parasitic negative energy in order to survive, because that's how they were created. That was the other thing. I mean, I've known this since like 1986 when my friend Paul gave me that book. It's right in there. But you know the weirdest thing, Michael? I had to read that book multiple times over multiple decades, literally. It took me, and I'm a good reader, by the way. I've been a very good reader since before I was a little. I mean, when I was just a little kid, I was already reading very advanced books, and for some reason, I couldn't quite understand the context of the events up until, like, it took me till last year, 2014, is when I finally realized that, oh my God, the entity we know as Lucifer, who is the light bearer, by the way, when he and his crew entered a forbidden zone somewhere in this universe, they went insane. They were so traumatized that their consciousness, their soul, literally fragmented. Now, when it happens to somebody here on Earth, we say that is an echo or an alter personality. They literally have multiple personalities, and you never know which personality you're going to get. And they're competing with one another. So a person like that is not very coherent.
Right.
Right. Okay. But they still have consciousness. They're just not in control of their consciousness. And when I say consciousness, what I'm talking about, and I've actually, in that one article I got there called the Antidote for Archons, I actually have diagrams or graphics of what consciousness looks like, is waveforms that we're emitting, not just from our brains, but literally from our entire being, from our soul through our body.
I love that. On your website, it shows where our thoughts are like a drop of water going into a calm pond, and you see the waves just traveling. And and so that's what prayer must do. When we pray, we're sending those waves to the universe.
Absolutely, and it's all feeding back on itself, Michael. That's the really amazing thing, and this is why, you know, we have to be careful about what we think, how we feel, because thoughts and feelings are actually the same thing. We're still broadcasting even when we're asleep. We are sometimes even more so, because it shuts down part of our brain that's kind of scrambled. In other words, we're constantly being distracted. Our conscious mind is badly programmed. I mean, by these Archons, by the way. They've been in control here for at least 500,000 years. I know some people equate them with the Anunnaki, but that would be very misleading to say that, because I don't think that term really is adequate.
Then, well, okay. So then, how do we separate them from the Anunnaki? Are the Anunnaki? Was the Anunnaki actually mistaken? I mean, is this the Archons is what people are calling the Anunnaki?
Yeah, it's. I know it's a bit confusing. Here's the thing: the Archon is the fallen angel. It is also a mental parasite, because when Lucifer and his crew went into that place and they went crazy, they lost their ability to create with their consciousness. So they in order to survive, they started manipulating matter that already existed, and so technology was born there. Okay, science was born with them. He was the first scientist, and he's not stupid, okay, but he is so demented. And I mean, so are his followers. Here's something else you need to understand. They are multidimensional. They can shapeshift, and they have been pretending to be something other than what they are. In other words, this whole thing about them coming down in rocket ships is a false flag kind of thing. It's a facade. They don't need spaceships. I mean, they did create them once they lost their ability to travel to some degree, just with their consciousness. But I guess I should also I may have told you this before, but here's the thing: consciousness, because it is a waveform, it can be what we have to look at it as three phases. Just like a drop of water can be a solid, a liquid, or gas. The waves of consciousness can either be classified as pure consciousness, energy, or matter. And this is really important to understand because we know that there's different dimensions. And actually, when I think of dimensions, I think we're talking about different vibratory rates, because that's really what I just described there. Now, when those vibrations, those wave patterns, when they come together, they can either be in harmony or discord. In other words, one is creative, the other one's destructive. And clearly there's a lot of destructive waveforms or thoughts or feelings that are out there right now. And that's where Lucifer has gone, is in a very, very dark place. And he's dragged a lot of souls there with him. And of course, this world is smack dab in the middle of a civil war that he started, like I said, at least 500,000 years ago. When he went insane, his parents, who are the king and queen of the Orion Empire, said, there's no way we can let our son ascend to the throne because he's mad. And there, that would be irresponsible. And of course he got upset and said, well, the heck with you guys, I'll just create my own empire. And which he did, and that's where we're living. We're living in a matrix that he created using technology to generate a different, like a sub-universe.
So then we're basically a program of some spoiled, rotten kid?
Well, he's not spoiled. Okay. No, he's not. He's not throwing a tantrum. I know Wes Penray tried to portray it as that in his papers. But Wes didn't know what I had learned, and I recently shared that with him. And if you haven't read any of Wes Penray's papers, man, it's light years ahead of most people in this field. And so I do think that that's worth doing. And you can link to it on my homepage at unicusmagazine.com. Just click on the Stars of Orion, and it'll take you right to it. But no, he was a god. And I mean that in a literal sense, that he was a creator of worlds, just like his brother Michael, who's known, in Sumerian terms, Lucifer is known as Enki. He tries to portray himself as the savior and the father of humanity, but in fact, he's the enslaver. He's the one that literally imprisoned us here in this fake universe that, well, it's an illegitimate copy. And it's very limited. It's only like 4 or 5% of the known universe. Well, then we're off in a corner here, Michael, and we're trapped in a cube that's being generated by an artificial intelligence. And what it is, it's a much lower density, and it imprisons any soul that migrates to here for whatever reason. They come here. They're usually trapped here they're not letting anybody out. Unless you know how to get out of here and you stand up for yourself and say you have no right to keep me here. The thing is, he's very seductive. He's also the father of all lies. He's the father of the Archons, and he and his crew have been very good at manipulating our thought process. Okay. And the thing is, he's infected. They are all infected with these mental parasites that they accidentally created. That was unintentional. But when they came back into the wherever that forbidden zone was, when they came out of there, they were completely altered, and they were infected with these parasites. And those things are very, very contagious. So. Our ancestors knew about these things, and only up until recently in Western culture, did we start dismissing so-called demons or archons or whatever you want to call them.
You got to have the yin and the yang, right? So we've got the evil. Where's God coming in all this? Why is He allowing us to be enslaved like this?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael. Thanks for asking it. So his parents. At least what I'm understanding now, his parents, specifically his mother, is the goddess that created this universe. as well as this world. You ever notice how we say Mother Nature,
Yeah.
and yet we want to attribute creation to the Father? It's a dichotomy there. In other words, there's a disconnect. And let's go back to what I showed you on the page with the ripples.
Okay.
Those waveforms. When two waveforms meet, just keep it simple. When two wave circles intersect, they start to intersect. That's called a vesica Pisces, and it actually looks like a vulva. And so, if you look back in history, it's like for Egyptians, they said that all matter came from a goddess named Mat. That's the root of the word matter, M-A-T, Mat. All right, so the feminine principle is what gives birth energetically to all matter. And it's done with consciousness, or these waves of intelligent living energy is how it's all manifested. Now, when she created this stuff, it was originally designed to be a garden paradise, and it was supportive of all life. It was symbiotic. There were no parasites. There was no predatory behavior. It was only after her first son, Lucifer, went crazy and started literally a civil war in the heavens, that things started to become what they are now. Now, did she permit that? No, absolutely not. It was like I said, that zone was forbidden because it was dangerous. I don't think she intentionally even created it. Sometimes, people make mistakes. But the bottom line is she warned people, don't go in there, and yet he did it anyway, and this is the unintended consequences. Now, you got to understand, there's been times when they have been so, especially Lucifer's brother, Enlil or Michael, not you, but I mean, that's one of his names that we would know him by.
My enemies will love that.
Well, yeah, it's a great name. I mean, it's a royal name. It's a title, actually. But anyway, just like Lucifer means the light bearer. That's only one of his names. These beings have many, many names because they're essentially immortal, and they're also shapeshifters. So in that regard, from our perspective, we've known them as many different gods, but in fact, they're all the same family.
Are there people amongst us that are them and don't even know that they're them?
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. When Lucifer, well, let me back up a second. There have been times when the family really was so upset with what Lucifer, he was lying and doing some literally some seriously illegal things like rape. Okay, and that apparently in the Orion Empire, that's one of the top things that you don't do. But anyway, the reason they haven't annihilated him, I mean literally destroyed his soul, is because they're part of their family. And as a dad, I think you can understand if one of your children suddenly went insane and started doing things that were criminal and wicked, part of you, I mean, I shouldn't speak for you, but I know for me personally, having a son, if that happened to my son, I would not want to destroy him. I would do everything possible to rehabilitate him first, right?
Right. But
okay,
tough love.
Well, yeah, but this isn't just about bad behavior. We're talking about an illness. Look, I've given this analogy before. Let's do it again. If you have a pet, a dog, all right, a loving, faithful, obedient dog, and it gets rabies, that dog no longer is loving, faithful, or obedient. It doesn't even recognize you anymore, all because it is infected with a parasite.
That's right.
Okay, well, that's what I'm talking about. That's the situation we're dealing with here. Okay. And it's really difficult, very, very difficult to deal with this.
Especially when most people don't even know about it.
Well, because look, it's highly infectious too. We're all, to some degree, we're all being infected or affected by it, by these things. Either the Luciferian entities, these fallen angels possessing people, or the parasites themselves manipulating people to harm themselves or others, so that we generate waves of negative energy so that they can feed. See, because they're no longer connect. Not only did they cannot create with their consciousness any longer. I mean, directly. Okay, they've lost that ability because their consciousness is so screwed up. It's also demented, incoherent would be the right word. But they also, I'm sorry. I just have. Ask me another question.
Oh no, it's okay. It's so they're parasites, and you were explaining on.
Oh yeah. So they've lost their ability. They've lost their connection to that goddess energy I was telling you about.
Uh-huh.
See, because she didn't just create all this. You think about it. Your mom loves you, right? No matter what. She's always wanting to give you, like, hey, are you hungry? Do you need some? You got warm clothes? I mean, you know what I mean? Your mom is always wanting to take care of you. And that's just a natural instinct that's innate. Well, the goddess that created us feels the same way. She's constantly wanting to feed and nourish and nurture us. That's her nature. That's part of her design. And we've been cut off from that. And certainly the Archons are cut off from. They broke the connection. It all got broken. All right, but it doesn't mean we can't reconnect. See, that's the cool part about it. We do. I know. I remember what you were asking me. Yeah, there was here originally an experiment that the goddess and her son Michael were initiated with the help of a few other races of ETs, and this is where the human form was really starting to be perfected, and it was divine. In many regards, we had abilities that were far beyond most other entities, in the sense that, as far as being multidimensional, and like what we were calling remote viewing now would have been completely normal, telepathy and all kinds of wonderful things that would have been completely, like, common, normal.
And I think that it was common, because that's where you see a lot of these scriptures, and people say, well, I heard the voice of God, or I heard this. Well, I think that nowadays we could do that with our technology. So
yeah, but that's not the original stuff. Was when she created the DNA here, or as part of that group experiment, it was designed to connect to the cosmos, everything. In other words, it's a web. It was sort of like, okay, there's a web of light that interconnects everything in the universe, and because it's all intelligent, it's all self-referential, except for this crazy cube, this matrix we're in, but. The DNA I think of it as like a fiber optic. It's designed to carry information from one dimension into the next. In other words, from the physical to the spiritual, or vice versa. And a lot of us here have been so tampered with. Our DNA has been tampered with by the Luciferians that we're basically stuck on dial-up. If we can even get a connection, depending on our situation. A lot of people are just stuck on dial-up when it should be, high-speed broadband connection to the cosmos. So the other thing was that when Lucifer took over this world and destroyed the garden and turned it into a prison, a parasitic prison, he and his scientists actually turned off quite a bit of the DNA. So not only did we not have the connection to the cosmos, we couldn't connect consciously with one another telepathically. And so it was much easier for them to lie to us, and also to turn us against each other. So, in other words, divided, so that we would be more easily conquered and controlled by them.
Are they? I mean, this is kind of an obvious question, I think, but they're still controlling us. And are they using the mainstream media? That's one of their main tools. Yep. It has been for a long time, anyways.
Well, yeah, but think about it. Even before then, when people didn't have that, these entities were still manipulating us, and in many different ways. uh, they have been using us much like the way we use cattle or any kind of livestock.
Yeah.
And I don't mean just physically eating us. I'm talking about the energies that they're drawing off of us on a regular basis. I mean, you look around this whole thing about perpetual warfare, especially now, the war on terror. Isn't war terrifying enough? They had to ratchet it up now. It's like you're saying you're committing war against war. I mean, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, how much worse can you make it? Well, it's what I alluded to the other night when I called in to tell you I had a scheduling conflict.
Mm-hmm.
The end game here is that, at least from the Luciferian perspective, is that we're useful to them in the sense that, or I should say, we could become more useful to them to attack the Orion Empire at some point. You know, in Star Wars, how there was the Rebel Force.
Yeah.
Well, consider us the Rebel Force that Lucifer has slowly been grooming. And this is not the only world that he's doing this to, but this world in particular was a jewel in the crown. And there are special abilities that were gifted here in our DNA prior to him coming in and tampering with us. So he knows that, and he's been trying to, he's actually going to be upgrading us even further to a point where we'll be given what looks like extraterrestrial technology and for the super soldiers. And then we're going to have super psychics, like you see this all the time now in movies, people having this extra, some kind of extra, like kinesis or something. In other words, like they can, with their mind, they can do all these wonderful, like the mutants, right?
They've got a few extra stations on their dial. Basically.
Yes, because they genetically or something they've been modified, genetically modified to be more useful to the agenda. The Luciferian agenda is to ultimately go back and take over the Orion Empire. I don't think it's going to work, but again, we're talking. You can't rationalize with somebody who's irrational. You see, I mean, they're two separate things. I could try and understand it, but I can't really get into his head. I don't think I'd even want to. I want to remain sane. So, but one of the things that they did here when he took over was to take some of the original DNA, mix it with his DNA and others of reptilians and some of the more primitive life forms in order to create the worker, what they call the Adamu or the Lulu. And there was different levels that they created at different times. And it wasn't to mine gold, like Sitchin has claimed. It was, although maybe some of that may have occurred, the main thing, like I said, was just to be servants to these evil overlords. I don't know, the Archon. And it is an empire. You think about it. The way we look at royalty, they always have servants, right?
Yeah.
You can't be a royal without. Not just a couple either, right? You look at the Queen of England. Seriously, the way she lives. That's all. Even the secret societies, they're all. It's like the pyramid. It's all. The whole thing is set up to it's foundational for the apex, right? The capstone, the all-seeing eye.
Yeah.
Okay, that's him. He is the all-seeing eye.
And he is all-seeing right now with all the technology that's being used against we the people to spy on us. You can't turn a corner without somebody knowing what you're doing.
That's absolutely true. But even before that, look, at this point, they're just making it easier on themselves because they are grooming us for something. Like I said, genetically modified food is ultimately to sterilize the population so that we will have to resort to cloning. You remember, again, Star Wars, the clone armies?
Yeah.
That's us. That's going to be us. There's going to be, I mean, ridiculous amount of, and the thing is, they won't just be human. They'll be what Kurzweil is talking about, the singularity, where they're literally going to be like cyborgs. They won't just be purely biological. They'll be synthetics, or a blend of both.
Well, you know, China. I just went over a story today
Yep.
where they're starting to genetically modify the embryos, and so
No. Look, they're just admitting it.
Yeah, just admitting it, right? But I
Just getting around to admitting it. I'm telling you, this has been going around. That is just standard operating procedure here on this planet. It's been going on for hundreds of thousands of years here.
So when we
That
hear
kind of
about
stuff.
it, it happened 20 years ago. They've been doing it for
Easily.
the last 20 years, and yeah, I
Yep.
know. Same thing with
Yep.
technology.
Yes. So, unfortunately, that is where we're at. But okay, so on the flip side, what are the good guys doing about this? One of the things that I was shown, and I was really shocked when I read about it recently, is something called a super wave. And they know it's coming. They don't know exactly what it's going to do when it gets here or as it washes over us. Some people, so-called channeled entities, are trying to tell us that it's going to be the harvest. I don't know what that means. That's not how I saw it. What I saw was it was going to literally force everyone's DNA to become fully activated again. And that at that point, everybody was going to know everything all at the same time.
What about those who have passed on before us? How do they come into...
Typically, they get recycled. That's what I was trying to tell you before. There's a grid around this planet that, and it's a technology that only recently the scientists discovered and said, "Gee, this is like Star Trek. What is that?" You know, what it does is it's a net basically that keeps the souls from migrating off of this world, and that's not the only way it's done. By the way, when people pass over, they're typically met by so-called guides.
Yeah.
Those guides usually tell them, "Well, it's not your time," or wouldn't you like to go back to that? In other words, they're guiding them back to this earth, and that's a violation. But if people agree to it, not knowing any better, they just keep getting recycled back into the, they're like, there's the door, there's the exit to the prison. And they're like, "No, wouldn't you like to do a few more years, like a few more lifetimes here?"
No
it's like,
kidding.
Hey, look, I know that sounds weird, but
No,
it's like
it's really, it makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying that that it's 100%, but it certainly makes sense. It really does. And and it's funny you said a net that keeps souls trapped on the planet, because I've joked around, kind of joking, through the years about HARP and how it's probably used to imprison our souls, to keep us from leaving.
Yeah.
Well,
John Lear had mentioned something, that there was something on the moon, a large antenna that was capturing souls, but I think he had it a little bit off. It's actually broadcasting the net. But it's, like I said, it's not just the net. These beings, the fallen ones, they know how to present themselves. Like I said, they could shapeshift. They could present themselves as your grandparents, and they're like, "Oh, honey, why don't you come back? Why don't you come and live with us in this family?" I mean, they're really sneaky about this. They're very demented and disingenuous, and it's not like I want to bash them, because I realize that they are insane, and that's not going to solve the problem, by the way. Just talking trash about them isn't going to solve the problem.
Aren't they the ones running the show? Because
Yes.
it seems like the people in charge are insane, because
Yes.
I've said before I brought you on that, with the poisoning of the air, the water, the food,
Yep.
blah, blah, how could that possibly, why would any human do that?
That's right. They're not. And the other thing is that, now look, the Catholic Church has said possession is on the rise, but they don't tell you where these other souls are coming from to do the possessing of our bodies, or hijacking us, right? In the West Penray papers, he talks very clearly about where these other souls or entities are coming and hijacking it. It's sort of like the movie The Matrix, where agents could just sort of like take over anybody's body, right? Yeah. Okay, well, that's what we got. We've got a bunch of agents, Luciferian agents, that are coming down. They've come down here since 2012. They've been coming down in increasing numbers, and literally, they don't have to incarnate through a birth. They can just hijack somebody.
Oh, it's like Streets of LA, the game.
Yeah, right. Oh, sorry to talk over you.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Check this out. Okay, so somebody, think about it. How many times have you seen a newspaper article that somebody in a neighborhood goes berserk, right, and kills, like, say, their family, and then kills themselves, and then they ask the neighbor, they go, God, I don't understand it. The guy was so, he seemed like such a nice guy, Well, there's your answer. Yeah. See, this is all incomprehensible unless you put it into the proper context. And this was no easy feat for me to do this. And look, I got to admit, I think, unlike most people, I'm selfish. I was motivated by this, and this alone originally, was I wanted to know what these things were. Why were they attacking me like that? Why were they following me around? And I mean the UFOs in such a very covert manner. Why were they interested in me and acting so, like, just sneaky? I mean, it made me very suspicious, And at some point, I realized that they could actually read my thoughts, and that they were manipulating me to some degree, just like I said. The reason, here's what happened when I was with that boy. I knew something was wrong with him even before he had the accident, because I walked past him and he had this very large scar on his forehead. And I didn't talk to him. I just walked by. I said, "Hi, how you doing?" And he just kind of mumbled. He didn't even make eye contact. But I saw this big scar was already on his forehead. So, I don't know, 5 minutes later, when he ran full speed he went upstairs. He ran full speed into a sliding glass door on the second story, and he broke it with his face. And it wasn't. Here's the really sick part about it. It wasn't safety glass. I don't know why. And it broke. It just shattered. It was like a freaking guillotine, man. I'm so surprised that kid lived. But so anyway, when I ran over to the house, the grandfather had the boy in the bed and had a towel over his head. And I had gone into the living room looking see what happened. The grandmother was standing there like just a statue. She was in total shock, white as a sheet. I called the paramedics, and then I started talking. I was cleaning up the glass, and I was talking to her, and she said, "I'm glad the door was shut." I'm like, "What?" She says, "Yeah, if the door wasn't shut, I think he was going to jump over the railing. He probably would have killed himself." I'm like, "What?" And I'm thinking, "What the hell?" And she says, "Oh." And then I said, "Well, excuse me." I said, "Well, I saw him just a few minutes ago." I said, "I noticed he had a scar on his forehead. How'd he get that?" And she said, "Well, last year he was in his father's pickup truck in the back of the bed and playing with a cat, and the cat jumped out, and he then jumped out of the pickup truck head first and hit his head on the trailer hitch." And I thought, "Oh, Jesus,
man,
that
they better
sucks."
Put that kid in a bubble.
Except here's the thing. So as she's telling me this, she says, "I think that he thinks he can fly." And there was so much adrenaline going in me, and it was such a traumatic deal, with all the blood and the trauma, the shock of it all. I'm standing there trying to make sense of that, and that's when I suddenly, literally got goosebumps, and I saw these freaking things. It looked like they appeared in the room, floating up near the ceiling. They looked like ticks to me, but large, like the size of your fist. And there was a bunch of them, I think really what it was is I was seeing into their dimension. And that's what I was trying to tell you before. One of the things when our DNA was dumbed down, when we were designed, literally genetically designed, engineered to be what we are now, slaves, we're blinded. We were blinded. Not only could we not communicate well, we can't see well. We know for a fact that there's this large spectrum of energy, right, from ultraviolet to infrared. We can only see with our eyes a very narrow portion of that. but we know that there's all this other stuff out there, right? Because our instruments tell us this.
Yeah.
Well, occasionally people have moments where their vision is suddenly opened up, and they see things that that other people can't, and so therefore, well, I must have been hallucinating, right? But I think in 2011 something started to shift, and I realized, wait a minute, I've actually seen pictures of these things, and they were taken by Trevor Constable accidentally using infrared film. Anyway, so I started to put the pieces together in 2011, and that's when I began reporting on these parasites. But it has taken me really, literally a few years to fully analyze it and then report it in a way that is it isn't just about credibility here, Michael. We're talking about putting everything into context. The proper context is essential for people to understand that we're all caught up in this, by the way. I mean, we're all being affected. It's just a matter of degrees.
This kind of reminds me, we were just talking about this last night, it reminds me of that movie, I think it's called We Can See, or They Can See, or something like that.
They Live.
They Live, that's it. I could never rember the title.
John Carpenter, They Live. Yes, and that's exactly right. Now, the thing is, when our scientists look out into the universe and they say, well, there's a lot more out there, we just can't see it. So they call it dark energy, dark matter, right? And they say that it's like 96% of the entire universe is stuff we can't see. But in fact, if that's because we were blinded, intentionally blinded. No, and I don't mean just our eyes. We've been so badly manipulated that we can't see it. But that's what happened when I left my body. I was entering that other dimension that our scientists call dark. It's actually light. If you can see it, you would know it's not dark at all.
Yeah, if we can see on that spectrum, I bet, and not even being funny, I bet if we walked into, speaking of They Live, if you walk into like a Walmart or something and where you see the breakfast cereals, it would probably not say kid cereal, it would probably say kid repellent or
something like that.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. But okay, here's a good example. I like taking pictures. Every camera commercially that you buy has an infrared filter in it. If it didn't, when you took a picture, you would look at it and say, I didn't take that picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In other words, the camera has to be dumbed down so that it only picks up the frequencies that we see, not the ones that are really all there. And so that's why they do that to cameras. It's an analogy for what we are, or what we've become. And it's a total aberration. We were never designed to be like this. Originally, we had full vision, full comprehension. I mean, we were fully connected. We really were. We had full the high-speed broadband connection, and all that goes with it. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's like I said, when the super wave hits, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows for sure when it's going to happen. They just know it's coming. That it would activate or reactivate the dormant DNA, or the one it's been switched off. It's not really dormant. It was intentionally switched off, and at that point, everybody is going to know everything at the same time, and it's going to be, boy, you talk about like WikiLeaks or some of these revelations that have come out. It's going to be really shocking. I think some people are just going to have a heart attack.
Well, scientists now, again, they have just admitted that they have found triggers, on and off switches for certain things within the DNA, such as asthma. Now they say they found the switch. They could actually turn it off. Yep.
But but the thing is, just like look, if you have a cable company that you're using, right, and you're on your connection can be upgraded anytime at the office. They can just upgrade it, and you've got more bandwidth. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about increasing everybody's bandwidth literally over in almost like in a blink of an eye.
Well,
And
for cable, we got the box. For that, we would need,
yeah,
I guess,
yeah.
the chip, right?
No, they could no. Once you're connected to the cable company for your, let's say for your modem,
Mm-hmm.
your bandwidth is they can dial it up or down based on how much money you pay them. That was the whole thing about net neutrality. They were trying to, level the playing field for that. But some people have a lot better connection, a lot higher speed for their connection. And that's the way it's been on this planet for a long time. Only certain people would have an awakening. So suddenly they got high band, and they're getting high, broadband, high def, and they're seeing things, right? They're getting all this information, and people around them are going, "What are you talking about? You're crazy." I don't see that.
Yeah, and
so
I was going to say, I know what you're talking about, because to do this show, I have to get a better bandwidth, better internet connection. I mean, they almost make it. Time Warner, I got rid of them. What crooks they are. What dirtbags. So I finally got away from them. But yeah, they put in their hidden charges and stuff, and of course they track everything you do.
Of course. Yeah, there is no such thing as privacy. I'm not sure there ever was, to tell you the truth. It used to be, though, before all this nonsense, the Civil War broke out, there was a civility, there was a respect, there was a mutual respect and admiration, and it just wasn't. I mean, I get glimpses occasionally of what life used to be before all this, and it's painful because it was truly divine, and what we're living through now is pure evil. It's an illness. We're ill. We are so sick. I mean, think about it. You ever been really sick and then you get better and go, "Wow, I feel so much better." And it's like life was originally and it is truly intended to be divine, to be blissful, ecstatic. I mean, we are divine beings at the core of our soul. And even on our physical form, it was originally created to be part of, all connected to a divine, benevolent, loving creator. And that has been completely turned around. This whole thing about monotheism and the patriarchal system, that was all the work, it is all the work of Lucifer and his minions, because he really hates women. He's a misogynist.
Well, yeah, that's obvious. I mean, women have been mistreated on this planet for a long time, and they're still being mistreated.
It's horrible. It's horrible. But it wasn't always. It's a gradual thing, Mike. If you look at the historical timeline, it has gotten progressively worse. It's one of the reasons the tribal people had to be eradicated, because they still had a memory. They still had a matriarchal system to some degree. And it was just unacceptable to the Luciferians. They just didn't want these people to have that connection to the Creator, to the Goddess, to the Mother, our Mother. Their own mother. No, you can't do that. No, that's...
Well, and look at all these religious texts and, these different religions that women are, like, on the lowest totem pole. It's like, they smack them. Oh, be quiet. I didn't tell you could talk.
Right, or what they call honor killings.
Yeah, or
there's no honor to that. There is no honor to killing a woman. Come on, let's just be real about this. None of us would be here if it wasn't for the female of the species.
I wouldn't want to be here if it wasn't for that.
No, I know, but I'm just saying physically. Look, realistically, there is no way around this. That's a fact of nature. Without the female of the species, we wouldn't be here. Again, that's one of the reasons they want us to go straight to cloning, so that they'll have 100% control over the product, and they're also going to eliminate the feminine aspect of creation here. That's how much he hates women, because he knows that they're superior on some level. They're superior to him, and that just frosts him. I mean, it's just one of the reasons, but it's like he's sick. I mean that in every sense of the word. That being is truly ill.
Well, it'd be nice if there was a way to get rid of this being once and for all, because, I mean, I mean, how do you get rid of? I mean, it's not like we could kill him, right? I mean,
No, we can't, but his parents and his family could. And I don't know if they're going to go to that extreme. Like I said, I believe that they're trying to rehabilitate not only him, but reclaim this world. This isn't just another planet. This planet is special, not just because it has water. It was because it has been an experiment, a living library, is the way Wes Penray puts it in his papers. He says the DNA that was put here, they can't crack that code. It's too complex. It's all about consciousness. There's so much information that's embedded in the so-called junk DNA, and that's directly from her. And it's just weird. Like I said, they can't create. The Luciferians lost their ability to create DNA, so all they do is manipulate what already exists. Right? They try different combinations and all this. A lot of times it's failures, mutants, monsters, whatever. But they can't create matter using their consciousness any longer. So it's unsustainable. This was never intended to happen in the first place, and I'm not sure what the end result is. But at some point, it has to stop. It has to be resolved. This can't go on forever. And of course, they don't want all the souls here to suffer. And here's the other thing. I really don't want to bum people out, but here's the thing. One of the reasons that they haven't just liberated all of us, they being the good guys, is because Lucifer has said straight out, if you come in here and try to liberate or take away all my property, because do you understand what it means to be a subject of the crown?
Not especially, but
it means your property. It means you're the property of the court or the king. The empire owns everything.
But we're only property because we allow it.
True, that's true. But look, most people have agreed to it, whether they remember doing so or not. It's very subtle, and it allows a certain level of legality. It covers his ass, basically, in the court of Orion. He can say, hey, they agreed to this. Sort of like the whole serpent in the garden. She agreed to eat the apple. You know?
Right.
Yeah, well, you tricked her. Well, yeah, but she agreed to it. So here's the thing. When Lucifer has told his parents, if you try and come in here and take away my little playground, and all the people that I've subjugated here, I will destroy this planet and everybody on it. And when I say destroy, I mean literally annihilate it, so that even our souls would be dissipated in all directions, so that we couldn't reincarnate. That is the number one crime, according to what I read about the Orion Empire and their law. That would be the highest crime of the court.
All right, Robert, let's hold it there for a moment. We got to take a break here. It's that time. And they say, hey, cop shot this one or that one. And boy, right away, everyone's ready to fight each other. But, they're not looking at the big picture. And that's scary.
Yeah, it's hard. It's difficult, man. You got to understand, a lot of souls have been stuck here for so many lifetimes that they don't know. They've sort of forgotten who they are or how they got here. And the mind control thing, you really got to look more closely at the psychological warfare department of the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Because they're extremely active, and I detailed that in my second book, Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C. The conclusion, I talk a lot about that, and it's they're not just the psychological warfare department in the Pentagon is not just. They want to control everybody, and that includes Americans.
And they are, and I think that
they are.
One of my theories here, and I strongly lean towards this theory of mine, and that is that all these governments, these big, at least the ones that are playing in the game, are all in cahoots together. China,
yes.
Russia, United States. And then what they do is they put their little puppets in place, like Obama and Putin and whoever. And these guys, and of course they get to play war, and we're the game pieces.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's a 9-dimensional chess, and the elite that we think of as the elite are not in control. They are just errand boys for the Archons. You'd asked me before about Malibu, and one of the things
Yeah.
is that the UFO base caught a lot of people's attention for a while there. When it first broke, a different radio show, they claimed, "No, we found this." Turns out that I found it originally in 2010 when I was doing some research about that location because that's where I grew up, and I was actually trying to get some different views of the monuments up there in the mountains where I've been having all that UFO contact. It's right next to Point Magoo Naval Base. If anybody wants to look on a map, but the the so-called UFO base is, I had said originally was a portal because I'd seen these things coming in and out of the portal there multiple times, and only recently using satellite data looking for gravitational anomalies I was able to verify that there is a portal there, and I'll be publishing that information sometime this year.
Oh, you've been able to verify it.
Yep.
Oh, that's good. All right.
It is. It's really intense, man. I can't. I don't even want to like. At some point I have to tell people. I've been gradually sort of leaking it out there just in case something happens to me, God forbid, because I'm pretty sure that the powers that be are not going to be happy. But Malibu is not the warm and fuzzy little playground for the rich and famous that most people think it is. It's literally an epicenter of evil.
No kidding. So.
Yep, I know. But see, this is the thing. I grew up there, and it all started for me there. And like I'm sitting here in Hong Kong right now, speaking to you. I'm 12. Speaking to you from the future. It's 12 hours ahead here. But in a way, I had to go completely back into the past in order to make sense of how we got here. And a lot of people don't want to do that, I guess, for whatever reason. Okay, I can't really speak for other people. I know it's a lot of work because I'm doing it. But my investigation in Washington, D.C. was unparalleled. Nobody's ever going to duplicate it. Not that I care if they do. But you can't replicate what I've already done because I've revealed the hidden history. You can't, there's no more, there's nothing else to reveal there. Or if it does, it will only add to what I've already done. It's like when the guys at whatever that show was, they tried to say, "Oh, look, we found a UFO base," and then suddenly they're like, "Hey, that's Robert Stanley stuff," and I'm like, they literally, the head of MUFON literally plagiarized my article about UFOs in Malibu, just put it into their press release, like, "Look, we found this," and I'm like, why are you taking my stuff? It's like,
well,
not that I
think
really care.
I think MUFON's been infiltrated. I think it got infiltrated a long time ago. Honestly,
Yeah, I don't belong to any of those groups, man. And like I said, the only reason I was trying to figure this out is because I wanted to know for myself. But at some point, I realized, if I start networking with other people, I might actually get more information. If I just share with what I know, then they're going to share, and eventually, I can get more answers that way. And that's how it started. This was not a hobby for me. This was really a quest for the truth because it was my life, okay, and I couldn't make sense of my own freaking life, which is very unsettling, and so that's how I started investigating this stuff, and then it turned into a professional thing at some point when I met my wife, and we were working publishing Unicus magazine together, and I had to put that all on hold when we have a son. When our son came along, she went to work in the corporate world, and so did I. And but it was helpful. Like I said, the reports that I did at Honda actually made me a better journalist, investigator, and more importantly, how to present. Take complex information and then summarize it in your presentation so more people can understand it.
Right.
It's because it's not like people are stupid. It's just a lot of times they're really busy, especially the upper management that we were presenting to. Those guys had a lot on their plates, and they don't need to be bothered with technical details. They just want to know, what is the implications? How do we implement this? And so I think that everybody has a unique skill set, right? At some point, I would think that we all have a gift, and for whatever reason, God, mine is exopolitics, and I have thought about getting out. I've tried a couple times to just walk away, but I can't because I'm not done. I wish I'd been. I really wish I could. I kind of don't like this actually. It's. I mean, it's not. It's not a pretty picture. You know that.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a pretty picture, and I don't want to bum people out. But I think at the same time, people have not only a right to know, they need to know, because look, if this is not just chess is mock warfare. That's what it is, right? It's a game of war. And it's multidimensional for us here. So we're on a battlefield, and I think I've said to you before, the first casualty of war is the truth. Some people call it the fog of war. But so trying to get a straight answer is next to impossible. But ignorance on a battlefield is not bliss. It's dangerous. You're going to get captured or killed, right? Without some situational awareness, some intelligence, you're toast. You're just not going to survive. Or at the very least, it'll end badly. It'll capture.
So where are we headed in all this? Where are we now on this timeline? And I mean, they must be close. I've always anticipated that there was bases within our moon and Mars and probably other moons of other planets as well, but.
Well, and the portals, so there's the portals that connect them all. They don't just travel. Yes, they do have some spaceships that are physical, but they don't, even those things travel through the non-physical highways of these energy, what they call Einstein-Rosen bridges, wormholes, portals. They do that. They can traverse, great distances through these the wormholes. So what I expect is that, I saw this very clearly. This is very disturbing. The United Nations and the Vatican are preparing at some point in the future to reveal to us that aliens exist, and furthermore that they are returning, that they are the gods of our ancestors, and that they're returning to assist us. And it's a dog and pony show. This is the same group we've been just discussing, who've actually been running the show here for a long time. They're just coming out of the closet with a different, new and improved public relations campaign, and it's all designed to suck people into this. You notice all the smart technology that's coming out? That's just the beginning. Artificial intelligence is going to be everywhere. It's going to replace most people's jobs. Like I said, you won't even be able to have children in the future without the approval of the state or the.
Oh, even the sheepdog lost his job. I read where the sheepdog was replaced by a drone that rounds the sheep up now.
Yeah. It's like we're all basically. I mean, this whole thing is going in a very bad direction. So, but I do, like I said, I do expect this so-called. It's not even going to be disclosure. That word does not begin to describe what's coming. I mean, that's their agenda, is to continue to cloud people's mind about what's real, and they're really good at it.
Well, Robert,
even though it's evil, they're very good at they stick to their agenda.
Well,
let's put it that way.
They give people 500 channels to choose from. So,
but it's not just that, Mike. Look, if you've got holograms popping up in the sky, people aren't going to know what that is. But if the United Nations say, "Oh, well, these are these are benevolent extraterrestrials come here to help us." Sorry about the noise.
That's okay.
The neighbor's doing some. I'm living in an apartment here now. They're going to position it as these guys are returning to this planet to help us, and it's the furthest thing from the truth. And anybody that tries to deny that or contrary viewpoints are going to say, well, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a terrorist. I mean, they're going to come up with all kinds of.
Well, I know
labels.
A guy who's trying to convince me that the Galactic Federation of Planets is coming to save us.
Well, of course, and you're going to have, and that's another layer of censorship, self-censorship in the so-called New Age community. Most of that channeled information is coming directly from the Archons, and it's designed to breed or
are they contacting people and like some of these contactees? I mean, could this possibly be the contact that they're having?
Well, certainly the abduction part of it is. That's all done by the Archons. Again, they treat us like lab rats or poultry or whatever. I mean, livestock. And at some point, the only reason they're coming out of the closet is to upgrade us, to have a more direct interface with us, because they are going to introduce this artificial intelligence into our infrastructure, and we have to be able to integrate. We have to be able to, I should say, acclimate, or they're going to assimilate us, man. Okay, in Star Trek speak, sorry, this, like I said, this is not pleasant for me to tell people this, but they're going to turn a lot of people into cyborg, and there is a specific agenda here that's being played out. Of course, they're not going to tell you that.
Now, what do you mean? How will they be turning people to cyborg? Will they be chips?
It's gradual. Not just a chip. I mean, think about it. You lose your arm. You want an artificial arm, and it'll have you want a smart arm, a bionic arm. Well, yeah. How am I going to pay for it? Well, just sign this contract. And I mean, Jesus, talk about deal with the devil. That's how seductive it is. It's going to be not just in one location. It's going to be happening all over the world at the same time. This is being very well orchestrated, and it's not fully here yet, but it's coming. I mean,
and I bet it will be a smart arm. You'll be able to pull up Google on your forearm. Yep. Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah. Look, the internet's fine, but it's really a very retarded version of what already exists. What I was shown is a web of light that connects everything, and that our DNA is we're supposed to connect through our DNA, and we can actually see and hear things, or what do you call when you remote view. Actually, part of it we can actually project part of our self at a distance, and I think that's called biolocation. So it's pretty amazing what we were originally designed to do, and how far we've been taken away from that by the Luciferians. It's just
well, then somebody would also be able to hack that arm, maybe, and take control of it. So then people would have an excuse. Well, I didn't kill her. Somebody hacked my arm.
Hey, by the way, if somebody is possessed, that doesn't excuse, you think, because they open them whatever, like if it's drinking too much alcohol or drugs or sex or whatever. But what the Catholics say, and this is one of the few areas I actually agree with them, is that obsession is what leads to possession. So obsession, if you're obsessed with whatever, power, money, sex, you name it, right? That opens the door for these entities to possess you.
Is this? You think this is why I asked Laura Eisenhower this the other night, and I'll ask you, do you think that this is why they're getting ready, apparently, to send people to Mars, they say, in 2025, to live there, some kind of reality TV show, which is probably a false flag of some sort, but... Yeah.
I like her. She's got some interesting viewpoints, but, the problem with the Gnostic view of things is it's very, very limited, and the reason is that the Archons knew that the Gnostics knew too much about them. That's why they annihilated them. That's why they burned almost all their books. And what little we have is been badly misinterpreted. So Laura, I think Laura Eisenhower is one that she's really pro-Gnostic about the view of the goddess Sophia being actually, she says, like, I mean, I've heard her say this, that the goddess Sophia accidentally created the Archons. It's not true. It was her son, Lucifer, that did that. John Lash does the same thing, because he's going from a very limited perspective of what little information we have from the Gnostics. I just had to throw that in there because I think going forward, being clear about an issue is very important. Not just repeating the same old stuff. We have to really analyze these things carefully and make sure that they're in the proper context, because intelligence, again, if we're on a battlefield here and we get bad intelligence, that's almost worse than having no intelligence at all. I mean, by that I mean information. If you're getting bad information or misinformation on the battlefield, that's going to cause you to be misdirected or vulnerable.
Robert, thank you so much for saying that, because that is one of the reasons there have been times when I've had to call people out on this show. I mean, and sometimes they, their fans will, get a little upset, but,
Sure.
I call it like it is. These guys never answer any of these. They lie. They get caught in the lies, and people, let them go. They let them off the hook, and they continue to listen. And I'm thinking, hey, look, these people are lying to you. They're not doing you any favors. I mean, if you want entertainment, okay, but if you're looking for the truth, you really got to be careful who you're listening to, because there's so many. I mean, even alternative media has been infiltrated as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's why I get mad when these guys come out and they BS everybody.
Yeah, don't take it personal, man. That's just part of the programming. The thing is that we all have to take responsibility for this. We've been programmed, though. We have been this is not an excuse. We've been programmed over thousands of years, multiple lifetimes, to constantly look to someone else to give us the answers. Yeah. In other words, we have to look to an authority figure, right, to tell us what's going on. Right. Or we have to look to an external savior to pull us out of this mess.
And the truth is, the time we're born.
Right. That's part of the conditioning. That's how they keep us under control. But the truth is, we already have the ability to find out all the answers. Once we allow ourselves to reconnect to the cosmos, you'll have all the information that you've ever wanted or needed at your fingertips. I mean, it's actually part of our divine birthright. Okay, so, but I understand it's hard to overcome the programming. But that's one of the reasons that I remain completely independent. I think it's essential is to disassociate yourself with any kind of groupthink, any kind of cult mentality, or idolizing people, right, or worshiping any kind of authority figure in a corrupt world is going to be corrupt, in my opinion.
That's right. You see, boy, you're preaching to the choir for me, anyways, and I love it, because you're giving the right message. I mean, there's so many out there that are in it for the money, or they're in it for the fame, and they don't care. They'll whatever. Hey, if you're gonna put bucks in my pocket, I'll say whatever you want, or I'll do whatever you want. And now with the internet, I think that started as an experiment too. Let's see, they're using it for their advantage. Let's not mistake that. But at the same time, we've been able to use it as a great tool as well. They're realizing that, so they want to take more controls, because, in my opinion, once they get the internet, which they're about to, because people are allowing it, I think the guns will come next. And at that point, I guess it's game over. Physically.
No, not by a long shot. We have a ways to go yet.
Yeah.
And taking away the guns that's only part of it. Taking away our ability to procreate, that's another one. And then ultimately taking us off planet. First staging would be Mars, and that's the first. That's just getting us one step closer to heading back out to Orion.
So we'd be going back home, really, because I think, in my opinion, I think we kind of branched from Mars, or some of us have.
Yeah, but look, life is spread out through the entire cosmos. But when I say empire, I don't mean just a planet or a solar system. I'm talking multiple solar systems that are all, possibly even galaxies, that are connected up through one particular royal family And the Orion Empire is huge. I mean, by our standards, it's absolutely huge. But and Earth is just one tiny. Well, our solar system is just one part of it, but it has been hijacked during the Civil War, and it's no longer considered, at least by the Luciferians, they consider it to be their property, and of course we are their property as well.
Yeah. Now, I know there's some listeners who are curious and would love for me to ask this question, so I'll go ahead and ask it. These Bigfoot sightings that so many people swear up and down that they've seen, and so on and so forth, are these part of the shape shifting? Do you think? What's your opinion on that, if anything?
Yeah, I got to know a little bit more about this when I was living in New England, and I met a Native American shaman there who actually made friends with these things. And he told me that the reason you can't find them is because they're going in and out of portals. Now, I don't know whose idea that was, and I'm not sure that they can shapeshift, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, there's a lot of beings that do that. It's completely natural. It's not like it's some technology. And it's not hypnosis. I was thinking for a while maybe they just project it into our mind, but somehow they have that ability to change their appearance completely. And but yeah, the Bigfoots are real. I mean, there's definitely the evidence is, to me anyway, even though a lot of it's circumstantial, for that many people to be seeing the same thing for so long over so many different years in the same place, it has to be real.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've come to believing it a little more than I had in the past. In the past, it's not that I didn't believe it. I don't like to believe things. I like to be convinced by facts, by right. Evidence, and so I just never had. It was always blurry pictures, but there was enough people that gave accounts that I had to at least acknowledge that not everybody was lying, and I don't know what they've seen, so I figured, maybe this creature or this humanoid is real, and who knows?
Well, it doesn't like us. Whatever it is, it considers us to be like bad news, because typically when people get too close, they go into a threatening gesture of like throwing things or screaming, and they really don't want to interact with us. That's another reason why we don't see them very often. It seems to be just like the odd deal. It's not like they there have been cases, though, honestly, where people have left food out for them, and so there's been some very limited interaction, on a what I would call positive level.
Well, that's just like some people could go out and a squirrel will come right up to them, but other people, the squirrel don't want nothing to do with them,
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're amongst us now, and they're able to shapeshift, and so they've kept this secret. So then it's fair to say that the government and these evil extraterrestrial entities are certainly working together, and that's why they've worked together to keep it secret. But now there's times when we do see UFOs in the sky, and I would have to say not all of them are holograms.
No.
So we are seeing them. So isn't one side getting mad saying, hey, you're not supposed to show yourself? I mean, why do they do that?
That's a good question. I do think that occasionally there's infiltration by the benevolent ones, and it's very dangerous. That's one of the reasons they don't hang around. So it's kind of a multiple thing. I know it sounds like I'm making excuses for these guys, but I mean, because a lot of people have said that. Why don't they just land on White House lawn? Well, they did land on the Capitol, and that's in 2002, July. That's why I started my investigation. We've got authentic pictures of that, and that's 35 millimeter negative film. So it's like we know that event happened, but why it happened, I can't say, because we can't talk to them. And that's what I was telling you before. It makes me very suspicious that they can be loitering, literally just popping in and out whenever they feel like it, and they're not letting us in on it. They don't have the courtesy to tell us what they're doing here.
And they're breaking laws. They're breaking Earth
laws. They're
laws.
breaking our laws all the time, especially in Washington, D.C. The prohibited and restricted airspace is being violated by them literally hundreds, if not thousands of times, just from what I could find out.
Is there a base below the White House? I've heard that there is.
Well, that's the rumor. I mean, there's under D.C., there is some sort of network of tunnels that pre-existed the building of the city. That was one of the other things that I discovered when I was doing the research for the second book, Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C. There's the guy, Pierre Ellenfant, the guy that was the original architect, designer of the city. He met somebody there, a guy, his last name was Burns, and he had a farm, and he actually took Ellenfant into, it sort of looked like a natural fissure, but inside it was clearly someone had created these tunnels under the ground, and this was like early 1800s. And what was I going to say about it? Oh yeah, I found a map that actually said Burns Discovery, but it didn't say what the discovery. But I thought that was really interesting. There's a lot of clues to this, but yeah, we know for sure that in modern times that our government has put in an entire network of tunnel systems running in all directions. The rumor is that during the Cold War that they wanted to put something like a mile down, straight down, because that would be the quickest way to get key people to safety.
Yeah.
All right, but so anyway, there's a lot of things under the ground, absolutely, and that's one of the things I discovered about. That's why the gravity anomaly is there in Malibu. It's right in front of the so-called UFO base. What I said all along is that's an entrance to something underground, and we know from the public record that there are ancient lava tubes there, and that the Navy allegedly had been using those to transit inland all the way as far as, like, say, China Dry Lake, maybe further, in the Mojave near Edwards Air Force Base.
Yeah, and I not kid you, the other night here in Columbia, South Carolina, I was at about 2:49 in the morning, and I heard a big, it just sounded like it would sound like when an earthquake is happening, is what it sounded like. And I felt vibrations, but not a lot of violent shaking, just really good vibration. I couldn't imagine what it was. It kind of startled me. So I went outside to look, and nothing out there. No planes, no choppers, no trains, no trucks, nothing. It's silent. All I heard was frogs. And then 30 seconds it stops. 30 seconds it starts again. And I'm thinking, what the hell are they doing below me?
Yeah. Well, you're not allowed to know that stuff, but the underworld is a very real thing. And it's one of the things that I'm detailing in my next book. It's called the Malibu Chronicles. I'll have pictures up on the website when this thing is ready to go, but I could just tell you briefly that we have diagrams of this stuff thanks to the Native Americans. They talked about the three worlds. And so we live in the middle world, and then there's the lower world below us where these entities, these malevolent entities live, and they come up usually at night and harm people. And then you've got beings in the upper world, which rarely interact with humans. But it's a very interesting cosmology that they were aware of. And it fits perfectly with what I've discovered. I mean, let's put it this way. It's all starting to make sense. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together. And
yeah, they are.
It's going to be shocking. It's shocking to me. Okay, I grew up there. I experienced it. I'm doing the research, and yet, that's how it was with Washington D.C. There wasn't a day that didn't go by that I would find out a new piece of information, and it was shocking.
Well, it is shocking now. Yeah, I mean, I've had sightings, so I know that these things exist. I've seen solid craft, and I've seen energy type craft.
Yeah.
I mean, which are really strange. I mean, the colors are just absolutely brilliant. I mean,
but soft. Okay, it's what I say. It's like a combination between a laser and a fluorescent.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. See, I know what. Yeah, because I've seen it too.
Well, you make me smile.
I've had them actually beam the light on me.
You make me smile because somebody finally understands what the hell I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, but see, this is why language is important, Mike. We have to be able to communicate clearly what it is in order for people to understand it and hopefully pay attention. Because I know a lot of people have experienced this; they just don't know what it is. Furthermore, they don't know why they should even care about it because it seems like it's so benign. right? I mean,
Yeah.
hell, what a lot of people tell me, if they wanted to invade, they would have done that a long time ago. Well, they did. And it was so long ago, we don't even remember it because we've been under that influence for so long where, we're sort of, we have this collective amnesia. I mean, it was intentional, by the way. That's the other thing they do to us. Every time you reincarnate here, and it's not supposed to be like that, naturally, you would, in a normal, outside of the matrix, when a person passes over, they get to migrate wherever they want to go. And they don't have amnesia when they reincarnate. Okay? This is all unnatural. Totally unnatural. Everything we experience with this, amnesia between lifetimes and being stuck here recycled, that's all Luciferian.
And I always thought it was kind of cruel that we know that we're going to die. And some people say, well, we're the only species on Earth that knows that. And I don't believe that because if you've ever seen a really sick cat that might have ate a mouse that ate decon, that cat will hide before he dies. So he knows he's going to die and he's trying to hide. So I think that, but it doesn't seem like a sick joke that we would know we're going to die, but we're not given the knowledge of what comes after that. That's kind of horrible.
Yeah, it is. Well, and more importantly, it's a crime, actually, to deny us our memory. That was one of the things that happened to me that really, really set me off, was the night I was up on the mountain meditating and I met that being. I wasn't sleeping, okay? I had been meditating for hours, and I laid down on cement. And the moon was pretty much overhead at that point. I didn't have a watch. I don't like wearing watches. And I was laying on cement, and I was only there for like a minute. And then I just, that feeling, they say you're falling asleep, and you literally feel like you're falling, and you catch yourself like,
oh God, yeah.
Okay, but this time I didn't fight it. I just let it. I just went, and I floated right out of my body, however you want to look at it. Okay, and then I was in the light, and I met this guy comes up to me, and the last thing I remember. Oh, I said to him, I was like, "Whoa, who is that?" And he says, "I'm the Father." And I'm like, "What?" And then he started laughing. And I've always said previously to this, I've always said publicly that it wasn't sinister, but the truth is, it was sinister. I just didn't want to tell people this because, it's not, like I said, it's not pleasant for me to remember it, let alone tell people this. But he was getting kicks out of the fact that I was so, utterly confused, out of my element, and he was in control. The last thing I remember is him laughing. The very next thing I could recall, I was sitting bolt upright, and I thought that I just had a weird vision. Okay, I didn't think that I'd fallen asleep. I just, you know what I mean? I was so awake when this happened that there's no way I could have been asleep.
And Robert,
right?
I do know what you mean because I had an encounter with my mom a few years after she died, and I questioned it too, but the things she told me came true, to make a long story short. So, yeah.
Right. But here's the thing. When I sat up, thinking that I had just had a weird vision, and oh my God, what was that all about? Then the shock really set in because I looked off to my right and I saw the moon was now setting on the horizon. And that freaked me out because I'm thinking, there is no way I just fell asleep on the cement for that many hours. I'm so lucid. I'm in this place. I'm seeing this guy. And then the next thing, I'm completely blank. It's like somebody literally erased part of my mind for those hours. I can't access it. See, I knew, and that was the other thing. I felt like something. I knew somehow. I felt there was something. A lot more happened, but I couldn't. I still can't access it. But that's what then. This is where the benevolent side comes in. When I came down off the mountain later, after the sun came up, I went back to work and I checked on the boy. Well, I went back to the house. He wasn't there. He was in the hospital. I talked to his grandparents. They said he's going to live. He lost a lot of blood, needed 300 stitches, right? I said to them, I said, I know it's going to sound strange, but you can heal the scars on his face, but unless you heal the scars on his soul, this is going to happen again. Now, I don't know why, still don't know why I said that. I was utterly compelled to tell them this. It's not part of my job. I don't even know where that was coming from, but it was like part of me had to deliver that message to them. And it made me feel very strange, to say the least. I go back to where I'm like I said, I was the head of security for this homeowners association. We're talking really big time Hollywood producers, actors. These were not like, this was an important job, I thought. Some very powerful people. And I'm sitting there going, I'm going to lose my job. They're going to think I'm freaking nuts, you know? and this girl comes up. She's my at the time I had a girlfriend, and this was my girlfriend's friend. She was all excited. She said, Robert, I saw you in my dreams last night. You taught me how to fly. I'm like, well, what? You know? And she says, yeah, you took me up to the mountains and taught me to fly. I'm like, what did you say? You know, and I mean, I was like, I was so stunned by what was going on. I mean, I'm listening to her and I couldn't even believe what she was telling me, you know? And see, I knew something more had happened, but I still don't know what it was. But here's this woman telling me part of what had happened in my spirit body. I literally went and I taught her something that night. Okay. But then I went and I thought this was weird because it was so unlike her. She was total like materialistic person. Like her favorite things was fast cars and smoking cigarettes, going to shopping. I mean, this was not part of her consciousness. Anyway, later that when I got off work, I got a phone call from my grandmother, who was a very spiritual person, and she says, Robbie, she says, I saw you at the foot of my bed last night. It was the weirdest dream. She says, it was so beautiful. She says, you were all lit up like a Christmas tree. And she says, you were telling me something, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. I just had to tell you that. You know, and I was floored. At that point, I just sort of gave up. I was like, you know, whatever part of me was resisting that this was really happening, I just go, okay.
You know, I've always looked at that like when you hit that, I guess, dream state, it's almost like, but it's real. It feels so real. Yeah. It's like the consciousness says, all right, we've got the kids to bed, let's go. And it's like it takes off for about 8 hours and comes back. You know, it's got a curfew.
But the reason I mention that is because I don't think I only visited those two women. I feel very certain that I must have checked in. If I could quote, by the way, geographically, those two women were on either side of the mountain to my south or north. Okay, so I know I was doing that. If I wanted to go just a little bit west, I would have ended up at the beach, back at the beach. Well, actually, he would have been at the hospital. I really think I checked in on him, and that's how I knew there were scars on his soul. But okay, so there's at least 3 people that I had contact with in the so-called astral that night. But I really feel like I could have contacted dozens of people. I mean, I don't know, but for whatever reason, the Luciferians. Well, I'm kind of hedging here. I told you before when I called in the other night, the being of light who said he's the Father. That's Lucifer. That was Lucifer.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't get it. They think he's not real. And that was the greatest trick he ever pulled, was convincing most of us that he doesn't even exist.
Well, for me, it's not that I've always believed that these characters, there was some truth to them, and that these were stories that were being told. But I've often felt that those who are in power have done their best to alter the story in a way that benefits them.
Right. Well, because a lot of people have made deals with him. He loves making deals with us and tricking us into taking a bite of the apple. It's really sick, you know. I mean, it's like he's taking advantage of our weaknesses or our lack of information, and it's all done deliberately. So the thing about Malibu is, like I said, you know, that was just the beginning. Saving that boy's life was the beginning. The second time it happened at the beach, I saved a boy from drowning right on that same beach. And then later, I saved a guy from walking off walking off a cliff at night up in the mountains there, where I found the ruins. So I saved 3 people's lives, but I personally know 8 people that committed suicide in Malibu, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. What I have found in my current investigation is there are dozens of people that have committed suicide, or were murdered, or had what they call unexplained death. And it's a very small town. I mean, especially when I was growing up there in the 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s, very few people actually lived there. A lot of people visited, but it was, very small population. So do you know anybody that's committed? I hope not. Do you know anybody that's committed suicide personally?
I don't know of anybody offhand who's committed suicide. No.
You'd remember, believe me.
Yeah.
So when I tell people this, like I know 8 people commit suicide, they're like, "You're kidding," Most people don't know one, and that's a good thing. Of course, that's a great thing. But did you know that Robin Williams lived in Malibu for a while?
Did he? I was just thinking of him too.
Okay, and he hung himself. Did you know that David Carradine lived in Malibu, in this about the same area as Robin Williams in Topanga Canyon for a while? He was living there quite a while. He also died by hanging. That one of my friends, last name is Crowley. He hung himself in Malibu in 2006. And what really freaked me out about it is he actually came to me the night that he had committed suicide. He came to me. I didn't know it, but I didn't know it at the time. I thought he'd been attacked by a mountain lion, based on the dream that I had. It was crazy. And Britney Spears, okay, everybody's familiar with her. When she shaved her head in Beverly Hills, by the way, she's got a home in Malibu that they say is haunted. The spirit of a young girl, very disturbed young girl, supposedly lives there. And she bought the property anyway, knowing that. I mean, the owner disclosed this to her, but she bought it anyway.
Well, they're into that kind of thing.
She's part of the mind control thing. And believe me, Malibu is an epicenter of mind control, the monarch thing with like Marilyn Monroe and Britney Spears and others. So anyway, when Britney Spears shaved her head in Beverly Hills, she went back to Malibu, but didn't go to her home. She checked herself into a rehab, and there's over a dozen of them there, and they all claim that they can help you rid yourself of your inner demons. And I wish to God they could, but apparently they're not doing a good job of it.
They must not have enough priests in there.
Well, whatever it is, because like Kurt Cobain was trying to get clean there from heroin, and he was right there in my hometown. His girlfriend, his wife, is from there. And, shortly after being released from rehab, he went up and blew his brains out in Washington. But Britney Spears, like I said, she shaved her head, went to a Malibu rehab, checked herself in, wrote 666 on her head, started screaming that she was the Antichrist, and then she tried to hang herself with a bedsheet.
Good Lord, I didn't know that. See, I don't keep
No,
up with
of course not. Man, look, I don't expect you or anybody else to know this stuff, but you're going to have to learn, because people, like I said, the reason you need to know this is to protect yourself. I don't want to see any more people get harmed or killed in Malibu out of sheer ignorance of the fact that there's a portal there and that these beings are coming up from the underworld and manipulating people like puppets. And
is it just Malibu? I mean, it's
no.
Of course, worldwide.
It is worldwide. But the problem is that we have people. The celebrities in Malibu are role models, like Miley Cyrus.
Oh yeah, what a role model!
That when she was doing that show.
Hannah Montana.
Yes, that was all in Malibu. That was right on the beach in Malibu.
My daughter used to watch that show, and what a disgrace! But
yeah, I know, but I'm just trying to tell you, she's under mind control. She's part of the dark forces. And I really feel like the people that are, the powerful people that are attracted there, and I mean, the list is unbelievable. And you'll recognize these people of course, they're celebrities, right? But what you don't know is the dark side. All the suicides, all the heart attacks, all the cancer. I mean, it's just like, it's, Malibu is, like I said, it's actually very toxic. Most people don't know this either, but in 1959, the year that I was born, there was one of the first nuclear accidents in the United States took place just behind the mountains of Malibu in Chatsworth on the Santa Susana Ridge, and that's the Rocketdyne facility. It's overseen by the Department of Energy, and they were developing what they call SNAP reactors. It's a sodium-based reactor. In other words, it doesn't have liquid coolant. It's some sort of salt. Yeah. And the thing, it literally blew. It literally blew up. And the radioactivity was spread out over not only all the San Fernando Valley, but it went all over the mountains of Malibu. And unfortunately, that didn't stop there. I mean, it's not like they could clean it up, by the way. It just, the wind carried it, and it went all over the mountains. And every time it rained, it would wash down. But, I mean, it's still there, okay? Don't get me wrong. That stuff takes forever to get rid of. And but they also buried some of the toxic waste on site. They didn't just bury it. They put it inside a fissure in the ground, which was the stupidest thing ever. And that's why a lot of people in that area, a place called Bell Canyon, it's a very affluent neighborhood, a huge number of people there have thyroid cancer. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's the other thing was that there was, for quite a number of years during the Cold War, there was literally nuclear missiles in the mountains of Malibu. And I don't know if they leaked or whatever, but it's just kind of weird. But like I said, these things don't, people think of Malibu, they don't think of that at all. And I also recently found out that the military was all over the place. Even in World War II, they were dominating that west end of Malibu, where Point Dume and Point Magoo, ultimately where they built their base. Wow. They were doing all kinds of stuff. Turns out that there's a toxic waste dump right where I grew up. The school that I went to, Malibu Park, is built on. I mean, it's not funny, man. I got to laugh to keep from crying about all this.
I know.
I don't know how I survived it, Mike. I really don't know. But yeah, that just came out in the news recently. That the federal government did a 6-month study just to prove that it wasn't the military that created the toxic dump. Okay, well, who cares who did it? What are you going to do about it? Why would you build a school? I'll tell you why they built a school there is because you could never get a permit to do a private home there, or if you did, they would sue your ass off, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but you sell me a piece of property that's toxic? Well, there's a lawsuit. I mean, for sure, a slam dunk lawsuit. So they just sold it to the school district. Hell, they don't care. Send your kids there, because the school district, it's just money for them, right? It's easy money. All the parents are paying into it. Whatever.
Yeah, and it's another government agency, really. But
right, Robert, yeah, that's what it is. That's exactly right.
We've got to take our last break here, and then you and I will come back and finish up. We'll have about around 25 minutes to go when we get back. So we'll go wherever you like when we return. Folks, hang on with us. This is Late Night in the Midlands on the L&M Radio Network.
And he's amphibious, and that's why his bases are typically underwater.
I see. Now, you talked about strange places like Malibu, and I'm thinking, what about the Bermuda Triangle? Is that another one that could, because I understand on the other side of the planet the same thing happens. Yeah, in the Devil's Triangle off Japan, or Devil's Sea, I think they call it. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of weird portals around the planet, and bases. I think we're going to be seeing more of that revealed using these satellite gravitational maps that are available, and I'm going to make sure that everybody knows how to do that with Google Earth, in case you didn't already know how to get the plugins for the gravitational anomaly maps. There's 2 really good ones out there. I don't have the links up yet, but trust me, I'm going to do all of this work. It's taken me a little time to put. I wasn't. This is weird with me. I don't really plan this stuff out.
A lot of times it just happens, and typically once I commit, it's like I can't even back out of it now. It's like it's way too. I feel here's the thing. I have a conscience, and I've been haunted by those people, those 8 people. I wish I could have helped them, but I know there's others. I mean, I'm learning about them almost every day. It's creepy. I mean, a lot of them are celebrities, but even like there's people. It's just like Washington D.C. When I first put out the information, there was people saying, "Oh, did you know this? Did you know that?" And the same thing's happening with Malibu. And I'm learning about other people that I knew that have committed suicide or were murdered, and from my hometown.
What about Madonna, Lady Gaga? They seem like they'd come from there too.
Well, it's like you don't even have to. I'll give you an example. Like John Lennon, he spent time there with his girlfriend, and May Pang, and literally on the beach where I was working, and we all know what happened to him. But so did Ronald Reagan. The making of Ronald Reagan as a candidate or a politician took place in Malibu.
But then there'd be people who would say, well, yeah, and there's a lot of other people who have stayed in Malibu and nothing happened. So
this is true, but if you go to any war zone, not everybody gets killed.
True.
Or wounded, okay? So this is what I'm talking about. Just because it's an epicenter doesn't mean everybody's getting annihilated by it.
Oh, well, good answer, too. I love the answer.
Well, I've already thought that through because I know people are going to ask these things, and you have every right to ask it, and it's good because, see, that we at the very minimum, we need to have a dialogue. So people are free to be upset with me, or they can deny it, or they can take action. They can be empowered to actually protect themselves and their loved ones from what's going on there. And that's really my intention here. I'm not trying to upset people. I'm trying to warn them, to inform them, because that way I can live with a clear conscience. See, I don't want to have, again, I'm selfish. That's my motivation. I want to have a clear conscience because I'm empathetic, okay? When that boy I didn't have to do that. That wasn't my job. But there's part of me that couldn't, it was like literally just, I couldn't stop myself. It was like a reflex, for me. But that's who I am. Yeah. And I can't change who I am. I don't want to, actually, to tell you the truth. Even though it's sort of like a blessing and a curse in this world.
Well, let me ask you this, Robert. How tough was it when you started putting the pieces together and you said, and you know deep inside you that what you're saying is that's based on your research. To you it is true. This is going to happen. These things are happening, and they make sense. So, at what point? How did it feel? I mean, to actually start coming out with this stuff. It had to have been tougher when you first come out than it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't going to say anything because I couldn't prove it. And then in 2011, so you got to understand, but let's go back to what I was telling you about this character, this being of light. I thought he was benevolent. I thought he was actually coming to as an answer to my call for help. I didn't know who he was. It's sort of like that. I keep flashing back on that Rolling Stones "Sympathy for the Devil." Pleased to meet you. Won't you guess my name?
Yeah.
That's the game. What's troubling you is the nature of my game. Yeah, it's been troubling me. It's been troubling me for almost 3 freaking decades. I've been trying to figure this out. Who are you? What do you want? What's your agenda? Why are you playing me? So
yeah.
Coming out in 2011, all I was talking about was the parasites. And the reason I did that is because at some point, I really couldn't I was struggling to figure it out. And so I visualized him thinking he was actually some benevolent being and said, hey, can you please help me figure out what is going on? And shortly after that, I started, it was like books and things that I'd read before where suddenly it's like I was reading them for the first time and actually starting to understand them. So it was a natural progression. Incrementally, I kept getting more and more clarity, and that's what I wanted. I wanted clarity. I want things to be in the proper context. And at some point, I wrote an article with those photographs of these parasites. Okay, and so, but I when I published it, I thought, this is people are not going to be happy about this. I don't know if I really want to be the one to do this, but so I visualized him and I said, look, if you want me to do this, give me a sign, because and make it real clear to me, and and if you really want me to do it, I will. But I mean, I'm not really comfortable with this. And then I don't know. It was a few weeks later. I got a call from Coast to Coast. It was an emergency deal. George's father just passed away, and they needed somebody that evening. I don't know why they didn't have somebody booked, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
It was just bizarre. And I said, well, what did you want to talk about? And she says, what do you got? And I said, oh, okay, here. And I sent her the article. She's looking at it as I'm talking to her. I said, so that's it. She goes, perfect. I said, are you sure? Are you sure you want to talk about this? She's like, yeah, let's do it. Oh, all right. So I get on the phone with George, and he's like, he's just like raw emotion because, his dad just passed away.
Right.
And he tells me, he goes, we get into this conversation, he goes, Robert, this is the scariest thing I've heard. And I said, no, actually, this is the fact that we're talking about it is a very healthy sign that we're starting to recognize the problem. I said, come on, why would you go to a doctor if you didn't know you had a problem? You know what I mean? You don't try and solve a problem unless you know you have it. And we've got a problem. So that was how big it was. When I first did that on that show, I literally got email from people all over the world. At least, more than 100 emails from that. And they were all thanking me, saying, oh, it's about time somebody finally recognized, started recognizing that these things exist. Because these people had all seen it too. They'd all experienced it too. Maybe, not exactly the same, but they were aware of it. And they were so relieved that somebody was finally starting to report on it in some way that was credible. So that's what I've been doing. And not just with that show, but, through my website and your show. And I've done a lot of radio. And the thing is, I don't think I'm ever going to see in my lifetime, I'm probably not going to see the end result of what I've been doing. But I know it's having an effect, a positive effect.
But don't you wonder that if when you're done in this physical world and we get recycled, right? So you come back.
Nope, not me. That was the great thing about Wes Penray's work. He shows us how to get out. He shows people who want to leave how to leave through the grid and how to tell your guides, basically politely, to just piss off. You don't have any authority. Thanks, but I'm not going with you back into wherever. I'm not going back into a tunnel of light. I don't need you to tell me where I want to go. So it's kind of interesting that information is coming out too. A lot of people I know in my small circle of friends have all said that, yeah, I'm not. If I now that I realize I've got the option, no, I'm not coming back to here. Why would I?
I hope there are signs in the hallway or something, so I know.
Well, that's Wes Penray's next paper. He's actually he realizes that he sort of threw it in with the mix with so much other historical information. It's just like, oh, and by the way, there's an exit. So his next paper is going to be all about how to prepare yourself to make sure that if you want to leave, that you're fully prepared.
Okay, so some of us escape, and if we escape, we escape to where? Where do we end up?
Well, it's returning to the real universe. The other 96% that's real is benevolent. That thing is, that's a great question actually. Is we'll go wherever our consciousness or our desires take us. So, like remote viewing, you kind of need a target, and it doesn't have to be a specific. Like it's not a coordinate on a map. It's more of a feeling. It's like, okay, let's put it this way. Analogy. I'd love to retire in Hawaii. Okay, that would be a goal to live and retire on a beautiful island.
Well, I know people there.
Yeah, well, I know, but the point is. So I'm visualizing this in my mind, right? And I kind of know how to get there. And at some point, I'd love to do that. It's kind of the same thing when we leave here. Visualize what it is that would really make you complete or content. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because ultimately, like I told you, once we're out of here, what's going to happen is we're Do you remember the movie When Dreams May Come, or What Made Dreams May Come?
I was that what Robin Williams?
Yeah.
Yes.
When he died and he was
yeah.
in there, and literally he was creating stuff with his, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's kind of not that we're dead, but I'm saying our consciousness. Once we're outside of the matrix, our consciousness is uninhibited by any of these this crazy restrictions, and so we can literally manifest things with our thoughts very quickly. So we'll create stuff, and then we'll probably be attracted to people like-minded, and let's say, okay, let's build a paradise, let's build a Hawaii resort, over here with our minds, and let's live in a resort on an island here.
So somebody who thinks that they're going to go to a fiery pit of hell may create that.
Unfortunately, yeah, that's a possibility as well, and I would hope at some point they recover.
And at some point, they're going to need a radio show host there to let them know that they can leave.
That's funny, because at that point, like I said, once you're out, we will all have access to truly an unlimited number of channels coming in, where you're literally hearing other people's thoughts and conversations. So it's like the internet on steroids. I mean, you can't even imagine. The internet is like I said, it's literally a retarded version of what really already exists out there beyond the matrix. Once we plug into it, I mean, everything and anything you could ever think of, and a lot more stuff you can't even imagine, you're going to be able to tap into it and see it like holographically in your mind's eye. Like imagination, it doesn't mean it's not real. It means you're having images. You're seeing images.
Well, yeah, nothing becomes a reality until you've thought about it. I mean, you don't build something without thinking about what you're going to build first.
That's exactly right. It starts off as a thought or an image, and then it manifests in the physical. So, but that's, like I said, beyond this prison, we can actually do away with all those steps and just use our consciousness, not just our mind, but our entire being will generate those waves. And especially when we work with others, I mean, for all we know, we could end up going out and creating whole new worlds, whole new solar systems. All that is it's innately part of who our being. Because think about it. Look, if we're created in the image of God or the goddess, that means we have that ability too. It's just not being used here. Our potential has been so stifled here under this current very sick, regime, this Luciferian regime. It's weird, Mike. It's like we are.
It is.
We are gods. We are gods, but we're imprisoned here by demons. I guess if I had to summarize it, that's probably it.
And we're really fooled by a 3D kind of, I don't know, it's like a control grid.
Yeah, the Matrix is false, and it is all designed to control us and keep us disconnected from the original creation and our like I said, our true potential as creators, using our consciousness.
I see it now, Robert. When I do cross over to the other side, whoever does come to confront me is going to have a hard time dealing with me for a few minutes, because I'm going to want to see some proof.
Yeah, show me your ID.
Yeah, show me your ID.
You know what? I'll send you the link to that particular section where Wes talks about how to get out when you're crossover. Suicide won't work. Suicide won't work. Hey, you remember the show MASH? Very popular. That was all filmed in Malibu. Do you remember the theme song?
Oh, that's right.
Suicide is painless.
Yeah.
That's the theme song.
Oh boy, that's.
I'm telling you, Mike. I could not make this stuff up. It is so. Like I said, these are all pieces of a puzzle. When I present the entire puzzle, it's going to shock people to the core. Because it's doing it to me. Like every day, I find another piece and I put it in there. I look at it, go, oh my! Literally, I'm saying this stuff, talking to myself, going, oh my God. No, I mean, come on, really? It's just. It's amazing. It's amazing. So hopefully I'll get a chance to finish that project this year. But and I'll certainly keep you posted on whatever comes
All
up.
right, sounds good. And Robert, I thank you so much for joining us tonight. I always enjoy talking with you. It's
Same
always
here.
a great conversation. You're down to earth, so to speak, and you're real.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
always a fun conversation. Anything you want to get out
Thanks.
there, by all means, go ahead.
Well, I mean, any updates on my work are going to be at my website at unicusmagazine.com. It's spelled UNICUS magazine.com. And well, most of the information is free. Some of my shows are archived. It's like, I don't know, like $1 a show or something. And I do have some magazines and books and the articles, like I said, most of those are free for now. And
Yeah.
it's going to be it's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out, my friend.
It will, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again and again in the future,
Thank you.
and seeing how close to home we bat this sucker. So,
Yeah. Okay.
well, thank you very much,
My
Robert.
pleasure.
As always, you're linked up on my website. We keep you there.
Thank you.
All right,
Very
thank
good.
you, my friend. Have a good night.
You too. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Robert Stanley.
Lucid dreams, meaning that when I was in my dream, like I was in my room, I was in my neighborhood. I knew where I was. Okay. I also knew I was sleeping, but for some reason I had this other body that I could go places, and like sometimes I would just go next door to the school.
So
You know?
did it feel deja vu when you actually seen these things in real time?
Yeah. Yeah, it shocked me. I mean, I was 25 years old. I'd already been to 57 countries. I'd seen some of the great monuments of the world, like Stonehenge and the Parthenon and the Great Pyramids. I mean, I'd actually been there. So like I said, growing up, when I had these dreams about these, the where I went, I knew where I was in my dream, even as a child, because I had landmarks. The Point Magoo Naval Base. I'm just some people, they're really good with orientation with landmarks. I mean, I never get lost. I always know where I am, and I know where everything. I have this spatial awareness. I guess whatever you want to call it. So even when I was dreaming as a child, I knew where I was going. I just figured it was all in my imagination because there's no place like that. Okay, let me put it to you this way. Sometimes I would be up in the mountains at this place that I called my night school, where it was this temple, and it had this very ornate carvings, and there was these people there, and they were teaching classes. They not just for me. There was a lot of people there, and it was bizarre. It really was. And then other times I would have lucid dreams where I was with the Native Americans. Now it turns out I would find out much later in life that when I actually started meeting some of these Native Americans in Malibu, the Europeans call them Shumash. I don't think that's what they call themselves, but the bottom line is when I started speaking to some of the elders and I showed them the pictures of the monuments, they said, "Oh, those were created by the first people." And I said, "Well, who's that?" And they said they were destroyed in the flood. I said, "Really?" Because that's pretty universal. I was very surprised to hear him say that. But one of the things I remember about my dreams with the first people, so-called, was they not only did they have the temple, but they also had stone cities that were, fairly elaborate. And they had ships, and they wore. To me, they looked like Greeks, and in their dress was robes, these white toga type things with sandals. And so I didn't know anything about Lemuria at that time, but after I had that experience in 1985, people, like one of my friends gave me a book out of nowhere. I guess I've been telling him what was happening, but he says, "Oh, you need to read this book. It'll help make sense." And
today, and I'm looking
Okay.
at these pictures. So off the coast of Malibu,
Yeah.
there appears to be what would be a base of some sort. Is that
Right.
correct? And then there's these monuments that are just incredible. Now, where are those? Are those near that base or?
Yes, it's directly inland from the base. And here's, it's like I was, okay, timeline again. How this all started was when I was living in Malibu. I was working there as a security guard, and it was September of 1985 on the equinox when I saved a boy's life. He was bleeding to death, and basically all I did was call the paramedics. But if I hadn't done that, he would have bled to death right there in the house. Okay, so what happened though at that time was I saw these other dimensional parasites in the house, and it was only for a moment, but it was long enough for me to realize there was something wrong. What happened was these things started attacking me when I broke up their party. They started coming after me, and so I ended up going up to the mountains that night by myself and meditating or praying or whatever you want to call it, and having an out-of-body experience, literally going into another dimension where everything was light, and meeting a being there who was extremely radiant, bright. I mean, he was a being of light, I guess you call it, a light being, and who said he was the father or my father. I can't remember which exactly, but anyway, after I came down off the mountain, I checked up on the boy, and it turned out that he did live. He had to have 300 stitches in his head, face, whatever. Yeah, it was. I'm telling you, this was a life or death situation, and this to make things even weirder is like I had two different women tell me that they saw me in their dreams the night I was up on the mountain. So this got me really curious, Michael. I mean, it's like I wasn't sure what was going on, so I started going back up to the mountains, and part of me I was looking for hopefully to try and connect with this person again who said he was the father, and because at that point I really had a lot of questions, and what I found instead were these megalithic monuments, and what was really, I mean, for me anyway, what was really weird was, you talk about deja vu. When I got there and I started seeing these monuments, I thought, hold on a second, I've seen these before in my dreams. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to have reoccurring was by Norman Paulson, and I do have a link to some of that book because it was very helpful. Not only tell me about Lemuria, but also maybe where these parasites had come from. Because that was a really big thing for me. Was I didn't understand what those things were, but somehow intuitively I knew that they were influencing that boy to harm himself.
And if I may, I was reading up on these parasites, okay. And I guess at one point you had discovered that they were actually like holographic, and I'm wondering if they're actually holographic, then that would mean that they're not real and that we make them real, or how's that work?
No, they're in another. Okay, look. Everything is, you could say everything's holographic, but the holograms interact with one another. Let me just put it this way. It's a virtual reality that we live in. Those things exist as more or less in a higher frequency. They're not physical, but they still need energy. I mean, everything is energy anyway, right? So they need a parasitic negative energy in order to survive, because that's how they were created. That was the other thing. I mean, I've known this since like 1986 when my friend Paul gave me that book. It's right in there. But the weirdest thing, Michael? I had to read that book multiple times over multiple decades. Literally, it took me. And I'm a good reader, by the way. I've been a very good reader since I was before I was a little. I mean, when I was just a little kid, I was already reading very advanced books. And for some reason, I couldn't quite understand the context of the events up until it took me till last year, 2014, is when I finally realized that, oh my God, the entity we know as Lucifer, who is the light bearer, by the way, when he and his crew entered a forbidden zone somewhere in this universe, They went insane. They were so traumatized that their consciousness, their soul, literally fragmented. Now, when that happens to somebody here on Earth, we say that that is an echo or an alter personality. They literally have multiple personalities, and you never know which personality you're going to get. And they're competing with one another. So a person like that is not very coherent.
Right.
Right. Okay. But they still have consciousness. They're just not in control of their consciousness. And when I say consciousness, what I'm talking about, and I've actually, in that one article I got there called the Antidote for Archons, I actually have diagrams or Hi, Michael.
Good evening, Robert. How are you tonight?
Doing well. How are you?
I am doing great, and I've been looking forward to talking to you, my friend. I'll tell you, I put up some links, by the way. I should tell people this quickly. If you go to the homepage of Late Night in the Midlands, you'll see in the picture slider a picture, and it says for tonight's picks. If you click that, it will take you over to Robert's site where he has some fascinating pictures for you to look at. So I thought I'd get that out there. So you could go to our drop down menu, L&M tonight's show picks or something like that. Tonight's show picks, and the link is there as well. So if you want to go over and look at some of the things we're going to be talking about tonight. But Robert, welcome aboard, and it's great to have you back. And you got on with us the other night, a couple weeks back, and
yeah.
you've really piqued a lot of people's interest. So wherever you'd like to start would be great with me. I mean, I'm all ears. I guess start with a little background, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you for putting up the links and for having me back on the show. I've done a lot of things in my lifetime, but I guess I should say I worked as a corporate journalist for Honda Research and Development towards California for about 8 years. And that was very helpful in my later life as I started, or I should say I continued my research about UFOs and extraterrestrials. I learned a few things about creating timelines, and I think that's really important because in order to put all this into context, we sort of, I find anyway, it's helpful to have a timeline. And that's what I did with my investigations of Washington, D.C. I mean, I can't believe it, but I spent like almost 8 years investigating Washington, D.C. and all the covert UFO activity there. But I'm also the editor of Unicus magazine. I started my own talk show for a while there. I was doing that, and I've been taking a break to continue my research. And oddly enough, it's led me back to my hometown of Malibu, California, which I mean, everybody knows the place, or at least they think they do because of all the the television shows and whatnot, movie stars living there. But there's a whole nother side to that. Just like Washington, D.C., everybody goes, oh, I know. Hey, there's nothing you can tell me about Washington. It's like it's such a public place, right? Well, guess again, I mean, it's just that's kind of how it goes for me. I have a knack for finding things that most people overlook.
And and I was looking at the pictures on your site, and I love going to your website, by the way. Thank you. You've got some great information there, and it really, really gets a person thinking. And it got me thinking.
Graphics of what consciousness looks like is waveforms that we're emitting, not just from our brains, but literally from our entire being, from our soul through our body.
I love that. On your website, it shows where our thoughts are like a drop of water going into a calm pond, and you see the waves just traveling. And and so that's what prayer must do. When we pray, we're sending those waves to the universe.
Absolutely, and it's all feeding back on itself, Michael. That's the really amazing thing, and this is why we have to be careful about what we think, how we feel, because thoughts and feelings are actually the same thing. We're still broadcasting even when we're asleep. We are sometimes even more so, because it shuts down part of our brain that's kind of scrambled. In other words, we're constantly being distracted. Our conscious mind is badly programmed. I mean, by these Archons, by the way. They've been in control here for at least a 500,000 years. I know some people equate them with the Anunnaki, but that would be very misleading to say that, because I don't think that term really is adequate.
Then, well, okay. So then, what? How do we separate them from the Anunnaki? Are they? I mean, are the Anunnaki? Was the Anunnaki actually mistaken? I mean, is this the Archons? Is what people are calling the Anunnaki?
Yeah, it's. I know it's a bit confusing. Here's the thing: the Archon is the fallen angel. It is also a mental parasite, because when Lucifer and his crew went into that place and they went crazy, they lost their ability to create with their consciousness. So they in order to survive, they started manipulating matter that already existed, and so technology was born there. Okay, science was born with them. He was the first scientist, and he's not stupid, okay, but he is so demented, and I mean, so are his followers. Here's something else you need to understand: they are multidimensional. They can shapeshift, and they have been pretending to be something other than what they are. In other words, this whole thing about them coming down in rocket ships is a false flag kind of thing. It's a facade. They don't need spaceships. I mean, they ultimately did create them once they lost their ability to travel to some degree, just with their consciousness. But I guess I should also I may have told you this before, but here's the thing.